Sorry, we've been muted.
To CIP for $30,000 a year for the next, each of the next 5 years as well, to put into the open space fund. And I'd like to tell you a little bit of our reasoning behind that. As you're probably aware, the open space fund can be used to purchase land, to purchase conservation easements, to purchase agricultural restrictions. So someone owns a farm and they're thinking of, selling that farm and somebody's going to develop it. You can work with those farmers to put a restriction on the land, so it's always going to be used as farmland. So these are all ways for us to kind of invest in open space and time. It's real important to preserve forests and farms because there's so many benefits to the town and the residents, including, keeping food local, wildlife habitats and corridors, which are really important. It's not just, we have, some properties in town, for example, like that Ruby Park, and then on Mason Road, we have several open space properties there, but we really don't have any linkages. And so you can have these larger areas for wildlife, but if you don't have ways for animals to travel and intersperse, then you don't have diversity going forward. So those are important things. Also public recreation, the trail systems that we have in the parks right now, a lot of people are using the trails. Fenton River Park is busy. And of course, clean air and clean water. We are in a drinking water watershed. The Fenton River runs to the reservoir in Mansfield, which serves the towns of Willimantic. And also our aquifers feed the Fenton River aquifer system that Yukon uses. So we have some really important needs to take care of our forests because that helps to keep our waterways clean and our aquifers. So currently the open space balance is about $57,500. And we expect that probably another $3,500 will come out of that fund that's already been appropriated to use for some legal fees. We're still finishing up with the Talmadge property. We did purchase that in June, but we're still working with the state of Connecticut to get the grant. We were awarded a grant for $81,000. Most of that money will go back to the reserve fund. About $15,000 will be coming back into the open space fund. But we still have to do some legal work with the state. And that's going to be about $3,500 to do conservation easement and legal fees, things like that. So after we add back, take that $3,500 out and add back $15,000 or so for the grant reimbursement, we anticipate that later this year, we'll probably have about $69,000 left in the open space fund for the balance. And we understand in the past, sometimes people have said, we'll just, if you have a piece of land in mind, come to us, we can look and see if the town can use reserve funds. The Conservation Commission strongly feels that we need to put more money into the open space funds so we're in a better position to actually be more proactive and to look at the key parcels in town that are still undeveloped and be able to start to work with land trusts, the state, as well as landowners, and talking about how we can work together to preserve more of this space. The Plan of Conservation and Development from 2018 says that the town has a goal to protect 20% of the land in town as open space. Doesn't mean that the town of Wellington has to buy all that property. We have about 12% now in open space total. The state owns some, Joshua's Trust, the town. There are some conservation easements in developments when subdivisions, they gave small pieces of open space that aren't really very practical for the town to use, but they're open for the residents, perhaps, of those subdivisions. But we only have about 12% of our land in town right now that's actually protected against development. And the goal was for 20%. So we really feel we need to be more proactive. And this is why we're asking for more money to go into the open space fund. Do you have any other thoughts? Or questions? Yeah.
I have so many questions. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So you guys work with the Connecticut Farmland Trust.
Well, we could, yeah. If we had a piece of property in town that would fit their criteria, we could work with them and perhaps get some grants. But usually there's a match, so the town will always have to match some of the cost of the land.
So is there? I'm dumb.
No,
so just
no.
Please speak to me like I'm dumb, okay? So it seems to me, a dumb person, that the force of the Farmland Trust, which I follow, and they always have these wonderful stories of we saved this like ancestral farm and all these things. They must have some sort of criteria before they'll work with another town.
Yeah, they're an agency that works with any town and land trusts as well. So anybody who's interested in conserving farmland in their towns can work with the landowner, Connecticut Farmland Trust, the town, and the local land trusts can all work together to figure out what that property, to keep it from being developed and putting a conservation easement on it or a restriction on an agricultural restriction, working together to figure out how to do that. And usually you have to get an appraisal on what the value of that easement would be, because you're taking away that right to develop that property. Sure. And once you determine that, you can come up with a figure, for example, that you would offer to the person that owns that land at the time to put an easement on that land so it can never be developed and will always be agriculture. And then the Connecticut Farmland Trust might be able to, they might help negotiate all that, but they can also help with funding. So you might have the town have to put so much up, the land trust and Connecticut Farmland Trust.
Well, one of the things that Connecticut Farmland Trust is known for is saving small farms. The state, when they're looking to buy farmland, I think it's still a minimum of 50 acres before they're interested in getting involved with a land preservation. But Connecticut Farmland Trust is known for its small farms that they preserve. So that's the big deal. In a lot of cases, people don't have large farms, they have small farms. The state is looking for large parcels, and Farmland Trust is that intermediary that is willing to address small farms and small parcels.
So is there anything that you guys could think of that would make our position here in town more attractive to Connecticut Farmland Trust? Like, what could we do to make us like a bigger attractive player to them? Because I'm sure they have lots of people who want to.
It takes people, the landowners, to initiate. That's why several times the Conservation Commission has sponsored evenings where we have attorneys come in and they'll talk about what resources are necessary, and in each situation it's different because every landowner has different things that are going to affect them bottom line. And basically we're talking about, you know, the taxes. And how much is being saved? What's the land worth? So in each situation, it's different.
The open space money can be used, you know, to work with landowners who have forest land besides farmland. So it can be used for a variety of things.
And it could be used in this way with Connecticut Farmland Trust to help move you from the 12% to the 20%.
Yes, it could be. That would be one of the partners. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I just was wondering about I have two questions. First would be, you talked about the Benton Ruby Park. So this money is for acquisition of new open space. Would it also go to maintaining the open space that we already have?
No,
Okay.
it's only for new acquisitions, and any type of associated costs. So, for example, I'll give you an example. We just purchased 16 acres on Mason Road to add on to open space. That was $125,000 for the land. But we've already spent about $20,000, which included a survey, appraisal costs, legal fees. So that open space money can be used for costs associated with a new land purchase as well as in land, but not in maintenance. And a forestry study. What we have been doing is we do have some park and rec money, and when we have to do maintenance for our current open space, we can ask the town to take money out of that fund to help trails. We have forest management plans on our open space property, so that's usually where we request that type of funding. Also, the Conservation Commission, we have a budget of about $1,500 a year. We use some of that money to improve the trails, so we'll buy materials. We use volunteers for almost all of the work. We really have saved the town a lot of money for maintaining our open space. So,
and I just have one more question. I'm just wondering how you arrived at the number. Like, what is the goal for that amount of money?
Yeah. In the past, we've asked for $15,000 to $30,000 a year, and the last time the CIP added any money to the open space budget was in 2019-20, that funding year, 30,000. So that was the last time any of our requests have been actually, some money was put in. And I think, as I said, the reason that we're asking for 30,000 a year for the next 5 years is we feel it's important to have money in that fund so we can be more proactive. It really is challenging for us to approach a landowner with 40 acres and say, hey, let's talk about how important your land might be to add on to Benton Ruby Park, when we don't know if there's going to be any money there. And we understand that there's other funds, for example, like the reserve fund, that potentially could be used. But our understanding too is you're keeping less in the reserve overall. So we're a little concerned that going forward, it'd be very hard to be proactive unless we have some money set aside in the open space fund dedicated for that. A lot of towns do that. Some of them will even bond $1 million and stick it in their open space fund so they can be proactive. So Tallinn, for example, had done that.
Except it was more like 4 million, wasn't it? That they did?
More recently, probably, yeah. I know that they had done $1 million, maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
And they were seeing so much development, they were fearing.
Their latest acquisition was Holt Hill on 74. After you leave the green in Tallinn, you go around that, and they just put a big sign up. So most of that mountain in there is what their latest acquisition is.
I'm just wondering if you could just, the open spaces that here in Wellington, we already enjoy. Could you list them for us?
Well, Benton Ruby Park is over 300 acres. And on Mason Road, we have the Knowlton Preserve, the Talmadge Conservation Tract. And then we just are adding another 16 acres to that because the gentleman who sold us the original 28 acres passed away, and his estate sold us 16 acres.
And do they all have the sort of trail system that Benton Ruby has?
Yeah, we do have trails there on Mason Road.
This is the north property.
Right, well, the Nipmuc Trail, which is managed by Connecticut Forest and Parks Association, runs through Wellington, and it connects to some of the trails that we've put in on Mason Road.
Oh, great, so a statewide trail too.
Yes.
Okay.
It runs from Wyndham to Union to the state line, actually.
All right, great, thank you.
And the Boy Scouts have built bridges over there, I think.
They have.
Under direction, yeah.
They've helped us.
Could I just ask what your, what the big picture is, if any of this money is geared toward? I know this is a start and it's in reasonable figures, but if you wanted to build up an acquisition fund versus handle the surveys and legalities at the drop of a hat kind of fund, what would that be for a town like Wellington to move closer to the 20%? What would that and you, as you suggested, it might require something like a bond if it were to happen.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot more money, obviously, to try to get, so 12%, so in town, 2,600 acres is currently protected. To get to 20%, we have to acquire a total of, well, not acquire, excuse me, we have to preserve 4,300 acres. So we have a difference there of about 17,000 acres. And it depends on, how much per acre depends on what the property's like. If it's very highly developable, it could be $7,000 an acre. If it's something that's landlocked, it might be 1,000 to 2,000 an acre. So it depends.
And is that 12 to 20%? Is that average for around here? Is that above average?
It's depends on the town and what their open space goals are. And some towns might already have a lot of open space because the state owns like a large forest. For example, like in Ashford and Eastford, they have the Natchon Forest, Chaplain, which is Union larger. They may not feel that they need to put as much toward that because they already have a lot the state has.
Okay. So like a Talent or Mansfield or
Mansfield has a lot of open space. I can't tell you the percentage, but they have a lot. And they also, the state owns property in Mansfield.
Okay.
Yeah. And Tallinn has quite a bit too. They've been very active in purchasing. They must have over 25 open space properties just owned by the town.
What did you say your balance was in that fund after you deal with the Talmadge?
So after we finish with the Talmadge, it will be 54,000. And then we're expecting to be able to put 15,000 from the grant reimbursement. We're getting a grant back from the state of $81,000. Most of that's going back to the reserve, but 19% of it's going back to the open space fund because 19% of the cost of the land came out of the open space fund.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I have one more. Sorry. Don't give me any specifics. Do you have eyes on other areas that you're hopeful for?
There are several properties that are surrounding Benton Ruby Park that are undeveloped. That would be highly desirable.
Okay, so like a best case scenario, some place to direct these funds, should it? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In a lot of cases, what we can't anticipate is somebody contacting us and saying, I'm interested in doing something with this piece of property I have. And how do we get out of the gate and engage them without sufficient funds? This is why Collins and other communities have bonded millions of dollars to be able to address this when the opportunity arises. And one of the things that Collins has done, they're very aggressive about this. They want to hold down any more residential development because they overbuilt, and that's why their taxes are at the level they are. So it's towns that have more open space in general have lower taxes because you don't have services that have to be provided.
I have a question. It's kind of in that vein, I guess. So open space is, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the definition of open space. Is it necessary that the open space is developed for people to use for like trails and stuff, or is it just space that you guys purchase and negotiate and it's just not able to be developed?
Usually it's open to the public, and when the town has purchased property, all of it is, when we purchase it, it's open to the public for recreation. So we typically will put trails there. And if we get a state grant, a matching open space grant to help purchase the property, it's required that it has to be public open space with trails.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all the ones you have, Benton Ruby, Mason, Talmadge, Nipmuc, those are all open to the town.
Public. The Nipmuc State Forest is state property, and that is open to the town. Yes, and the other properties that you mentioned are owned by the town, and they're all open to the public. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Karen Ann.
I came in a little late, so you may have said this and I missed it. Okay, I wrote down that you said we currently have 2,600 acres. Is that all town or is some of that state?
Most of it is the state, and Joshua's Trust owns a small amount. The town actually only owns 518 acres of that amount. So about a fifth of the open space.
Thank you.
One other quick thing I just want to add is going for grants is great. You know, it's great that the state has an opportunity so you can get some matching funds, but sometimes, I mean, the process is lengthy. I mean, we started for the Talmadge property, we started in 2020 talking to the landowners, and we just closed on the property in 2022. It took over a year and a half almost for the state to go through all the process it had to in our application and everything. We're still dealing with them to try to get money from them. If you have a landowner that's going to be putting this land on the market, you don't have time to work with the state. It's over and done. So sometimes you have to have this money readily available to act quickly. So if we're proactive, we can start to work with landowners ahead of time, maybe before they're even thinking of putting it on the market. That gives us time then to, you know, apply for grants.
One of the things that I'd like to mention doesn't have to do with dollars and cents, but it has to do what people said when we were dealing with the 84 warehouse, and the point that numerous people in town made mention that they want Wellington to remain rural and they enjoy their woods and such. And that's what we're asking for. We're the people that try to bring that to fruition so that there's land that people can use. An awful lot of people say, oh, there's so much open, you know, there's so much land in Wellington that's not developed. And if you go to the transfer station, the people across the street from those 3 new houses are lamenting the fact that there aren't woods across the street anymore, but there's only 3 houses.
Yeah.
So that's the reality that we're dealing with.
Downstairs.
And you know, I'd just like to think that the number of residents that came out and spoke in favor of rural Wellington should maybe help us in our ask for trying to keep it that way.
Mm-hmm. And Carrie, I don't know if you know, I think you guys said this, but it is in the plan of conservation and development. Like it's been a goal, it's been a plan for decades probably. And I've always thought we should put our money where our mouth is. And that's one of the only goals and only thing that everybody in town agrees on, pretty much everybody. is we want to preserve our open space, and we're not proactively doing that.
So is the goal that you said the 30,000 that they're asking for, or a different number, or?
I don't know. I mean, we've had this discussion year after year after year, whether or not, you know, you create a special savings account to put the money into,
Sure.
and you just, you know, do it every year, or you wait until they have something, which is how it's been. And it's worked out for the most part, but I feel your pain that you can't.
I mean, I feel like in my tenure here, like the Talmadge thing was something that was here, like it was brought to us the first year I was on this wretched committee, and we did get it. So, but I can understand wanting cash in hand to sweeten the pot for people, as it were.
Or just appear to be mobile and in doing deals, you know.
So you have to realize, or at least take into account, I'd like to have you take this into account, that over the years, the Conservation Commission has brought in over $300,000 in grants to help purchase. So we're not the slackers that are just saying, hey, how about the more money we can? You know, we go out and we make it work, and we make it work for the townspeople. And we're just asking the townspeople to help us out, to help themselves out.
I'm sorry.
What properties have you been unable to purchase because you didn't have money in your account?
There have been some properties that surround Benton Ruby that were sold like that. And we didn't have any money to really be able to act on anything.
40 acres just sold right next to Benton Ruby. It's on Tinkerville Road and listed. And that the asking price was, what was it? Yeah.
That's what they sold it for, 125.
125. The asking for that. Well, we had looked at the property previous, and we just shook our heads because they were asking like 3 times that at that point. So, you know, again, we could have acted on that 40-acre parcel, but gee, we don't have 100 and.
But has the town funded them via a town meeting appropriation in the past where you didn't have the money in the account, but it went to money purchase?
We've only done it through CIP, I think, before. So if that cycle has gone by, you almost have to wait till the next cycle.
I think they've been, if I may, pretty good stewards in not taking, bringing these kinds of things in an emergency like situation before the Board of Finance and before town meeting. I think they've been very diligent in their work, and the competitive grants that they're out there looking to get. This last one brought in more than they anticipated. So I think it's important to note that they're very good stewards of our money, and each time a piece of property came before them, they would come to the town and ask too. But they're very diligent in following the process. So I think with that, we need to take a hard look at how much we can put away.
Sometimes it would be nice that we wouldn't have to endure the 2 years grueling with the state. And at some point, I mean, when you're talking about land, and if for $150,000 we could add 40 acres to Benton Ruby Park with just not having to have the finance people go through everything and say, oh yes, well, we think we can shuffle, and then have to wait how many months in order to get the okay. It would be nice to just have to get a nod so the money is there. We don't have to hustle around, and people don't have to rearrange reserve funds. And as been mentioned, the reserve fund has been being lowered, so there's less there. And, you know, is it going to get to a point that the reserve fund isn't an option anymore?
Carrie?
Sorry, I swear, this is the last one. If you had a guess, roughly, every time you come here, if you had to do an average of what you were asking, where is it vis-a-vis the 30,000 that you're asking over the next 5 years? Are you asking for less than, you know, like the Talmadge property I know cost more? Like, what is this 30,000?
It was just, in the past, we've asked between 50,000, 15,000 some years for 5 years. We've asked for 30,000, but usually we haven't gotten anything. The last time was 30,000 for 1 year back in 2019-20. And we just feel like doing this way is not going to allow us to try to meet that plan of conservation and development goal, because we can't be more proactive if we don't know that there's at least some money in there to start to move forward and look at these larger parcels that might be around that Ruby Park, and maybe starting to talk to landowners about things. If we don't have that money there, it's very hard to just walk up to a landowner and say, hey, interested in selling your property? And we don't, and being on the cycle of having to wait almost for CIP and then ask to put the money in the budget for that year, you know, that specific reason makes it hard to do this. Please know too, though, when money goes into the open space fund, it's not up to us how it gets spent. It has to go to the town. The town has to approve any money that comes out of there. So we would have to go before Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and then the townspeople to say, we're recommending the purchase of this property at this price. And we would also be doing some type of appraisal to make sure that the town is not paying more than market value for it. So we're not just coming up with some rough number. This would be something that would be appraised, and we can offer a landowner less than that, but at least we would know we're not paying more for it than it's worth. So,
thank you.
And just for context, because this was years ago on CIP, and I don't know how many years I've been on it, but we had it sort of lined up, you know, for several subsequent years for the same amount. And it often falls victim to the end game chopping down the number to make a goal, you know, whatever the number is. And so that just kind of wiped out the effect of putting it in a savings account. If you're going to yearly have to spend your savings account, you know, you can see how that doesn't work. So
yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Comments? No, Karen, you're good. Okay. Well, thank you guys.
Maybe see you next year.
thanks.
Thanks. All right, next up, the fire departments. We submitted a joint submission.
Can I ask that we do it similar to what we did with Public Works? We hear their submissions and
yeah.
Question.
Good idea. So you guys will just give the whole spiel and then we'll ask questions.
How can you give plenty of narrative in your spiel?
I will do my best. Yeah. The first project under 23-24. I back up a little bit. It was decided by both departments when we met with the Emergency Services Commission that we would do a joint submission to show that we are trying to work together as far as planning out the future of the fire service and EMS in the town of Wilmington. I think both departments have, over the last couple of years, have grown together more than many years past. We do joint trainings and such. This is just another step to show that we're trying to work together. So 23-24, this project has been on CIP for as long as I've been a member of Wilmington, and it's a station addition and the replacement of station 49 up here on. So it's a station addition to the Route 32 station for Wilmington 1 and the replacement of the firehouse here on Old Farms Road. Both facilities, we've been on CIP numerous times. Both stations are inadequate. The one on 32, there's 2 people that are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the living conditions for having people there are not ideal at all. One sleeps in an office, one sleeps in our common room, training room, bunk room, living area. It's not cohesive to actually what we need to do inside of a firehouse. We at Town EOC had run out of there as well. Up here, I'll let Snyder talk about the deficiencies for their station. And I'm going to have Tyler jump in with the history of this project if everybody's okay with that.
More than what? The last study was it? Do you remember?
2009, 2007.
The council, voting to have a study done of the municipal facility study, so the firehouse facilities as well as the senior housing or the senior center at the time, and there was very clear, distinct recommendation that came out of that study. From then, sporadically, throughout the years, there's been investment made by CIP and hopefully the townspeople to put the money aside and for some seed money to start the planning process, construction drawings, things like that for the North Station for Wellington 1. And we're kind of getting to the point where this is pre-inflation, so some of the numbers have certainly escalated since 2009, 2010. So, one of the facilities, which is the North Station, Wellington 1 Station, is much farther along than any type of thought for replacing a firehouse up here. So I think it was 150,000 or so invested over the last quite a few years, 180,000. If we get to the point where we have to draw and we have to add from rough estimates. But there's been numerous discussion, a lot of discussion over the years regarding facilities. Obviously, Wellington Hills was built in 1952. Certainly, it has its deficiencies for what we have to do in today's modern fire service. The North Station that we're looking to add the addition to, there's an old adage that it was a wonderful garage at the time when they built it in 1980, and it's a very, very poor firehouse. So when it comes down to these buildings are just so old, they need to be, in some cases, demolished and new one built. In the North Station's case, a facelift to the existing garage structure that's there, and then in addition for proper administration and facilities for the paid staff that work there every single day. The numbers, unfortunately, are staggering, as I'm sure you can imagine. Alex and I were just in a meeting in Marlboro the other night, and they're in the same process we are regarding a firehouse, and their estimate for their construction costs went up $6 million over 3 years. The pricing is absolutely unbelievable for construction. One of the things that we've been routinely told over the years, going way back, is that we understand both you guys need new facilities. We recognize that. You can do another study. It's going to tell you the exact same thing, that they're inadequate, they're unsafe, they don't meet today's standards. The laundry list goes on. The problem is, like every other person sitting here, is that you don't have funding to do it. So how do you fund it? Wellington Hill has been in that building for ages and ages and ages. Our station north was built in 1980-ish. And the fire department actually took out a loan to build a firehouse, and we got a building and a fire truck at the time for $180,000. We took an FHA loan, which is a 40-year note to have proper facility. So like everything else, it comes down to money. And for better or for worse, one of the things that we've been instructed to do is, hey, when it's time to do a bond, that's the time. Such a big thing like that. That's the time that you really need to dig in on this and start, making some noise, if you will, and trying to work with your local politicians that try to convince them this is the best time to do this. And from a fiscal perspective, I'm not so sure if they're wrong, but that is the best time to do it. You're not going to just simply fork out $20 million in cash to go build a new firehouse. If you don't want to do it on a bond, you want to add it to a bond, you want to, do a couple of projects with it. So the bottom line is the urgency to replace these facilities and upgrades does not go away. It gets exponentially worse year to year to year. But you know, there is some, as all you are very well aware, there are some things in the wind regarding doing the bond, whether it's a school, whether it's Schofield Road, whether it's this or that, you know, and here we are. We're still in the exact same position we have been in since we started talking about this. And the issues that we face now in these facilities just get worse and worse every single year. And you get to a point where it's extremely tough to justify investing copious amounts of money into these places. We can just kind of put the Band-Aid on it. So I mean, I think that's really the long and short of it. From a historical perspective, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but from a more current operational perspective, I'll yield to my two distinguished colleagues.
Well, we said we would wait.
Oh, right, sorry.
I'm not talking about it was
Yeah, I'll just touch on mine real quick. Again, Wilmington Hill, same thing. We've had this in the plan for quite some time. Deficiencies, there's a long list of deficiencies, including bathrooms and parking spaces and garages for the amount of trucks, and the list goes on and on and on. We've all had tours of the stations and we've been there to see some of the stuff. In terms of the money, we kind of approached it differently in terms of asking and requests. We initially requested lump sums of, I forget what the initial request was, like 4.5, I believe, $1 million for replacement of the station. And we approached it that way because of, like what Tyler said and what Alex has said, that you make these investments in small steps, and then over time and how long it takes to get to the next step, your first step is already obsolete. So I mean, it's going to end up costing more money going back to try and catch up to today's times in terms of building materials and construction costs and things like that. So that's pretty much it for us. Again, we've been on the plan for a long time. Like Tyler said, jumping in with the bond cycle and stuff is you know, it seems to be the best opportunity to do this and move forward with both projects.
All right. Moving down our list, item number 2 for 23-24 is the replacement of the heritage extrication equipment on squad 113. This would match the stuff that Wellington Hill bought a few years ago, or a couple years ago. We've had a recent issue where our Hearst pump actually was only pushing out 50% of the capacity. We had to buy an older unit to replace it because they no longer make parts to replace or fix any of our stuff. Manufacturers stopped selling replacement parts. They don't manufacture it anymore. So this is kind of a needed necessity.
These are the tools we use to
cut people out, yeah, to get people out of cars. So the last quote that we got was just under $49,000. The remaining of it would be to, we have to do some modifications to the compartment that they're in because they need electrical and stuff like that to charge.
I'm sorry, is this 49 or
13?
Okay.
One on River Road.
Okay.
24-25 is a replacement for parking lot for 25 Old Farms Road. You want to discuss that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, we've again, we've been out to the property. A lot of guys, the committee's been out to the property. It's cracking, breaking, deteriorating, and as it starts cracking a little bit, it cracks even more. I've talked to Public Works Director prior to this one, and at that point had said there's no saving the parking lot, there's no sealing it, there's no crack sealing it and covering it. It's just going to crumble underneath anyway. Again, it just, as it freezes and gets water underneath now, it's just continually getting worse and it's crumbling. These projects that are in relation to the building that's there and the parking lots that's there are kind of like up in the air, as well as some other things because of this request for the new station. The majority of the people at Wellington Hill feel that this property should be maintained and kept up as good as possible until it's time to do something else with it. Not let it go, not let the parking lot crumble into, you know, and let the building fall apart with the hopes that maybe we'll be getting something different. And then again, if it goes forward when the project goes forward for a new station, that property will be worth something else to someone else. So again, the parking lot's just getting worse. sent pictures to Christina, I think it was the beginning of the season or last season, I remember when, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And I sent pictures of the parking lot and stuff and requested that everything stay on the plan for the parking lot.
All right, 25-26, squad 113 refurbishment for $125,000. This is to update some of the lighting on it, fix some body issues. This truck is a 2003. This is one of the busiest trucks in the town, if not the busiest. It goes to every motor vehicle accident, every fire in town. Our hope of doing this addition or upgrade to it, be able to get another 10 to 15 years out of the truck. Said it is a 2003. Right now they're recommending 20 years for replacement is what NFPA is trying to push. But we know that's not realistic, especially seeing a truck to price tag to replace that truck is about $900,000. Also 25-26 is the bay floor replacement for station 49 and the design and engineering for 25 Old Farm Road. You want to talk about those at all, or?
Just briefly, the parking, the bay floors are about the same situation as the parking lot. It's being delayed and there's cracking and things like that. The surface of the concrete's peeling off in a lot of places. Really needs attention. Again, we're on that tipping point. Let's maintain the building. Let's keep it up no matter what the situation is. Sink money into the floor. The design and engineering, again, is going back to the steps of keeping small amounts in the CIP for the plan and project of the replacement of the station. So that could certainly change if the project is funded in full, the bonding cycle or what have you. That could go away.
26-27, there is no projects. We held off anything for that year to try to let Fund 17 recoup, knowing in year 6 we're going to start planning where we will start needing to plan to replace another ambulance, depending on when the ambulance cycle actually gets going. But that's to help try to recoup Fund 17 a little bit. And then both departments agreed that the last year of the plan, 27-28, Rescue 149, which is a 1991 rescue truck, should be replaced. At that point, it'll be 31 years old.
And again, the Rescue 149 project, it's a 1991. So if on the year that it's put into the plan, which is 27-28, it's going to be closer to 40. It's going to be 37 years old by the time it gets, if that goes through and it stays in that year of the plan. And like you said, we understand that the replacement costs of these trucks are astronomical, but it's just nothing that can be done about it, other than trying to put band-aids on it and we did that. We refurbed that truck probably 12-14 years ago, and got rid of most of the rust and stuff, but it just keeps creeping back, and mechanical issues keep creeping back. And again, so it'd be nice to get closer to the 20-year replacement plan, but 40 years is a little bit of a stretch.
And just the last thing I want to say is that the department is trying, or both departments are working together to come out with a 20-year plan to give CIP. So there's not just a 5-year plan. We want to be able to show in the next 20 years, these are some of the bigger items that we need. So we are working to get that done, to try to get that to you at some point this year.
And with the efficiency committee that we've both been on and stuff, we've also kind of worked a little bit more in terms of non-duplication, like stations and planning stations together. You know, we've talked about briefly at this point, it's premature, what one station could do without and put it the other way. So there's not duplication of a lot of things. Same with apparatus and tools and stuff like that. So it's been going that direction a little more often than not.
Okay. I saw Erica had her hand up.
I'll ask, I'm sure everybody has a lot of the same questions, so I'm going to start with 2 brief questions, let you touch on the rest. The Hearst equipment, is there a reason why you didn't go to ARPA with that? I mean, that seems like a no-brainer. Was it not a need or?
There was a need, there is a need for it, and the thought originally was to go to ARPA, but we also didn't want to seem greedy.
Okay. I appreciate that, thank you. And the parking lot replacement, I don't disagree, it needs to be done. When I came into office, it was on a plan, it was to be done, and it didn't. Can you help us understand why then?
Yeah, there was a question that came up regarding the ground coverage. And the ground coverage, when we put the addition on that, the new addition on this station, we've exceeded the ground coverage allowance on that property. By any perspective?
Yeah, impervious versus impervious, but that's not gonna change. That's
Yeah,
still
no.
the same
So
thing.
what happened was, there was question on if we redid the parking lot, is it going to make more of a problem in terms of ground coverage and building and stuff? And the answer was no. But at that point, by the time we got to the answers and we got it all figured out as to what the exact question was and exact measurements are and all that stuff, it had been a number of years where the funding was not, where the funding went.
Well, the funding was still there. I think the question came to you, are you going to do anything with the funding? And you pulled it back.
Yeah.
So I need to be assured that if the town sets aside money, that you're gonna see the project through.
Yeah.
That seems to me, that seems to be one of the questions that should have been addressed before it got to year one on the plan, because I don't believe that it started on year one. It moved up the plan. So the same issue is there today. Are you ready to move forward with it if you were given funding?
Yeah, absolutely ready to move forward with it. Again, one of the other reasons why it didn't go forward is by the time this was figured out, and like we mentioned in several occasions, the cost of the project had gone up. So the funding that was allotted for that project was not going to do it anymore. So it's kind of like we had to start over again.
And you also got the property across the street.
Yeah.
Right.
Which confused,
Confused a lot, right? So we didn't invest money that we put aside here and then purchased a piece of property. I won't get into that we didn't have a plan for. So.
Right. Well, again, it just came up like,
right.
Open space talked about it, came up, we tried to jump on it and happened to work that way.
Wasn't there also something that just happened at our very first meeting, Erica? When you were reading through, or maybe you, Christina, all the statuses of all the things that were approved last year, and there was something like lettering on trucks or something. Maybe
no, there was
help me remember.
There was a T-149.
There was something that was
Right.
approved last year, but had already gone through without.
No, they're starting to do some work. So that was the current year's plan. The projects we were giving an overview would have been funding available this past July 1. So they're just in the process where they'd be spending. And I think Stuart was kind of giving us a little bit of an update on where they were spending the money for that year. So when I came into office in 17-18, the funding was there for this project and it kind of got delayed. So I just had some questions about.
Okay.
But it's still needed, and the same questions that existed then exist today. I just want to.
And just to clarify, the project is partially underway.
Yeah.
Some of the problems we're having is like a lot of people are having is supply chain issues and stuff. So we talk to people and they're like, yeah, we'll look at you in a month from now. We don't have the personnel, or we'll look at you. The products you want are probably not going to be available until the middle of summer, that kind of thing. So it's just a slow process, but it is active.
Could I piggyback on the paving? How with adding that bay addition is the impervious surface reducing on this?
It was
no longer an issue.
Reduced by removing some of the parking lot used to go all the way back to the whole school fence. We cut that all out. We reduced the parking lot size compared to the addition of the building. And so the question was, do we need to reduce more to replace the parking lots that's there? And our answer is just no. Right up what's there, replace what's there.
Is there anyone who surveyed it or told you that was?
Yeah, Carl did the survey and stuff like that. Okay. Again, getting the answers and going back to him and stuff. Again, he's a busy guy and not a lot of staffing. So, but yeah, he did answer the questions that.
Just one last, and it's except for the equipment. Are you saying A or B? New addition, new firehouse, repairing the old. Is that what you're saying? You've got multiple things that kind of overlap.
Yeah,
if the investment is made into a new facility, are you still suggesting that you need the parking lot replacement, all of the other items?
Yes, that's my question. What is the 11.5 million cover here? If you got the
That's a
11.
different question.
Right.
That could cover the projects for both fire departments.
Right, like the
In terms of
schools
the
had a
additions.
list of projects needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And they said, we're not gonna do these if we get this.
Yeah.
Are you, is this that what you're saying? That's kind of what I'm reading,
That's
but I wanna
exactly
make sure
what
I
I'm
understand what I'm saying.
I mean,
Okay.
you know, I take that back. That's not exactly what we're saying because we don't know what the future of that property could be. You know, we don't want to let it turn into a mess. So we don't really know what to do. The general consensus that the fire department is keep it repaired and keep up the cost and the maintenance and all that stuff, and don't let the building and the property go to waste.
But in year one, you're asking for money for a new firehouse.
yes,
Are we
yes,
gonna invest in a firehouse across from a firehouse? I guess that's my question is, if you get this, are you comfortable with these kind of falling back?
Yeah, if the new firehouse gets funded, I mean, we're comfortable leaving the old firehouse as is and doing whatever, selling it, turning it over, you know, working with down on it. I don't know what the value is.
Thank you.
I did sure Karen Ann first and then Karen. And then Jen. Okay, yeah, Karen Ann.
Yeah, my questions are pretty much statistics. I understand Willington Hill is purely a volunteer fire department. Is that true? Okay.
Yes.
Is it staffed on a regular basis, or are people just called in when they need them?
We're basically just called in as needed. There are people there quite a bit, but it's not a structured staff.
Okay, but Willington 1 has employees.
Correct.
How many do you have?
There's 2 people on 24 hours a day.
Okay, that's 2 people that you have for employees, or you have more than 2 and you rotate?
4 full-time employees and there's about 10 or 11 part-time.
Okay.
That are paid. So 14.
Okay.
But only 2 on.
Shifts do you work? Do you work 24-hour shifts, 48, 72?
30, yeah, it's 24.
20 hours.
24.
24. Okay. It's just, as a former firefighter, I do understand that sometimes shifts can get long. I've worked 72-hour shifts. So I was just curious. So that's what I was looking for, was just some statistics stuff. Thank you.
Here.
All right, so my question goes back to the $11.5 million addition replacement.
That's a replacement. The Hill, yeah, Willington Hill is a replacement. Also projects. It's 2 different projects in that figure.
So should that go through, which of the following things would then like just go away? So with the bay floor repair, replacement 25 old farm, that would go away. Design and engineering of 25, that would go away.
Project.
Obviously 1.9 replacement, not because that's a fee. That's not a, okay. And then my other question, my last question is more philosophical. Given the resources we have, what would you 3 gentlemen say, based on what we have, when have we failed in our duty to the people here? Like, has there been a time when we just haven't had the right thing? If we had this, we could have saved that. If we had this thing, we could have done that. Like, are we failing?
I think it'd be very difficult to put an instance to that statement. I think it's, you know, failing is not the right word. I think that typically in the fire service, whether you're in Willington or any other town, the things that we require to do our job, whether it's apparatus, whether it's tools, whether it's buildings, is huge money. A fire truck is $700,000 to $800,000 today. It's sticker shock to everybody. So it often gets put on the back burner for obvious reasons until, you know, we say, listen, the wheels are going to fall. So we got to get a new fire truck. Historically, the town has been very supportive regarding the ambulance. The ambulance is obviously the biggest piece of apparatus in the town. It's out 4 or 5 times a day. It's very busy. So, you know, having a reliable vehicle is extremely important. Where I think, again, I'm not going to use the word union regarding failing. I think one of the things that we feel discouraged a lot about, not only the folks that are sitting here from the fire service, but representing the fire departments in general, is that you know, when we do come to you and say, listen, the firehouses are a problem, we need the firehouses, that there's a feeling of contempt that occurs that, well, next year, wait for a bond. We'll do this, do that. Well, do the floor. You know, it's a proverbial case of polishing the turf, and that's kind of really where you get to. So whether we're easily dismissed, whether we're not taken seriously, whether folks think that we're you know, crying wolf, you know, we live and breathe this every day, and we wouldn't be here asking for these things if we didn't think that they were necessary to do our jobs effectively. But as far as, you know, I wish we had that or that house with a burn down. I don't think that's the case at all. We have, you know, wonderful mutual aid partners that can then help us, and we assist our mutual aid partners in Ashford, Hampton, Yukon, Stafford. It's a wonderful system we all belong to. So, you know, there's not anything I could think of in my 20 years as a fire chief where I wish I had, but it wouldn't happen. I think it's more on the you know, financial support when we come to you and say, hey, you know, we really think this is needed. Understanding the fact that they're huge ticket items. We get that. We're all taxpayers too. You know, we all pay taxes. It affects us as well. Maybe being a little bit more receptive to our what we're saying year after year, especially when it's the same thing over and over again. You know, perhaps would be a wonderful change in our eyes, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Can I add just a little bit too? And I say we failed a little bit, and we as a town, because I'll take the Willington One Addition project. When I came into office, that was a project that was moving forward, right? We had invested dollars. So we failed as a town, multiple entities, in investing taxpayers' dollars, and then not seeing a project to fruition. That's where I think we failed a little bit, is that we start and then we find something else we need to put our money towards more and never complete something in the fire service realm. So I think we need to be conscientious of, if we're going to begin a project, it should have some follow through, and we should be looking towards the end. But we've done that with many projects.
The problem of half measures.
Yes.
Well, it's short money, it's quick money.
Yeah.
Give them $100 right back from that year.
And I just want to add, there is one thing that both departments are going to run into is the state and OSHA and NFPA are now pushing these state or the mandates for the cancer laws for firefighters, where you need to have gross decon areas, you need to have places to be able to separate your gear from your living conditions. You have to have all of these other steps. We fall really short in that category, both places. People that are working 24 hours a day, they need to be able to come back and take a shower quickly. And that's not something, I mean, we do have a shower. I won't say that we don't.
But the shower's in the same place you decon all your stuff.
It's in the same place that you decon all the rest of your stuff.
And the medical supplies are stored in that same area, and the janitor's sink is next to the shower.
And where they sleep and rest is the same place the town is having their emergency operations center. Something so.
We're gonna, I don't want it to sound like we're going to run into some issues when these laws come out, and the state is pushing hard with the cancer law.
John had a question.
Not so good. I wanted to just go back to the efficiency committee and wonder if there was like specific work in the efficiency committee to come up with the need for both fire stations, where they are, and the specific things that you guys are talking about, like the replacement of the one on Old Farms and the addition to the one on 32. Because my understanding of the charge of the efficiency committee was to come up with so I guess I don't understand the third.
Well, the emergency efficiency committee was formed their first attempt was to foster an improvement in relationships between the two organizations. With the hope of not duplicating equipment where not necessary, and to generally just get together and sit down and have a forum of fire service leadership in the town to talk about current issues and purchasing and capital improvements. And that's really what started it. The issue regarding the buildings, or the replacement of the buildings, frankly, the replacement or refurbishment of fire apparatus has been an ongoing issue for many, many years. If you go back and look, I know I personally, when I was fire chief, was part of two or three separate studies. The town paid thousands of dollars to, they can pay consultants to come in to study the fire service, ranging from apparatus to buildings, to location of buildings, to replacement of buildings, to federal operations of the fire service. We had 4 of them that they've done, 2 or 3 during my tenure. And there are very specific recommendations that come out of every one of those studies. And I'm gonna let you guess how many of those recommendations have ever been implemented.
And collecting dust on the truck is not one of them.
Right. So how many in the last 25, 30 years have paid, I'm gonna guess, don't hold $120,000, $130,000 for studies to provide feedback to the town leaders so they can make a plan on how to move forward and nothing.
How to move forward just in general with the fire service, or
in general, apparatus replacement, apparatus facility building replacement. Yeah, so it's, so I my intention is to come off and flip it by any means whatsoever. It's just that this is like Groundhog Day for us, year after year,
Right, and I understand what you're saying, and I am sad that you use the word contempt, because there should never ever be any feeling that you guys come to a town forum and feel like you're not treated well or whatever. I'm using
some of the CIPs are pretty spirited.
But so when we met at the firehouse on Old Farms Road for one of our meetings, we had talked about kind of how things were evolving for both stations, and it didn't seem then that there was any kind of cohesive plan. Like, you guys were doing your thing and you guys were doing your thing, and it was just kind of, that's how it was going to be, and the taxpayers would have to eat it no matter what. So I appreciate certainly the fact that you guys are working together, and it clearly is, because you guys are all here together. I just we had been talking about a facility study for the town for like the buildings and all of that stuff, but not the fire stations. So if there is already something that's done, are you guys using those recommendations to kind of inform your
for us, the majority of our addition was off of what that.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, the last 15 to 20 years, our CIP requests have been routinely based on the recommendations of independent consultants that the taxpayers are paid for.
So, can I?
Is it electronic? If it's electronic, yeah. Not, you can come in.
Can we get a copy of it?
I think,
Yeah.
is there, then we must have an electronic version here. Yeah, we'll get it.
Maybe the whole board.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what we, again, we feel, if we don't do anything with the studies, what use are they to us? And that's how another way we failed as a town to actually take them seriously.
But I guess that's kind of what I thought about as the efficiency committee's goal was to think about, to conceive of all of the fire stuff together, and then give us, as not us CIP, but us.
I will say, as far as the efficiency committee, we have met once since 2019.
Since COVID.
Since the start of COVID. But in the meantime, during COVID, both departments worked very closely together and have continued to work very closely together. Tom and I talk probably more than any. I don't think you and Tyler ever talk as much as you and I do now. No. But we're doing joint trainings together. We're trying to work better. We have a joint officer meeting, which is, as long as I've been the fire chief, we've never done, scheduled for sometime in February.
To answer your question, that is the ultimate goal.
That is the ultimate goal. Yes.
So I guess I don't need to ask this question. I'm going to anyway, but as far as the recommendations go, I assume that they're in those studies, there was some kind of, yes, you should have 2 fire stations, or you should have this one grand fire station in a different location.
That is not in there, but there is.
Huh? Some of there is. What you're touching on is a little bit of a different subject regarding the potential merger of the 2 organizations, a single organization, build 1 firehouse instead of building 2.
Well, I mean, it's not really different, because if you guys are both asking for multi-million dollars to add to or get a new firehouse, then it's kind of the same discussion. Like, why are we gonna put millions of dollars into the facilities that exist if we're gonna make, if it makes more sense to have a new fire station somewhere else or something like that?
Well, sure, and those types of discussions have happened, again, in the last 20-25 years, but there's always, you know, two sides of the coin. There's, you know, if you make a statement such as, well, I would just build one, you can all kind of just live there happily ever after. Well, there's a lot of logistics that go with that, from whose firehouse is it, who's in charge of the firehouse, who's, you know, are you going to stay separate as two separate organizations, one organization sharing the firehouse? There's a lot of logistics that go along with that, and frankly, there's a lot of personal feelings that go into that. There's a lot of history that goes into a decision such as that, and all of those things have been explored over the last 20-25 years ad nauseum. From consolidation to staying separate to building one firehouse, and everyone was go, we all live there.
Question
All the things have been certainly discussed.
Well, when we're talking though about, well, I guess our charge, speaking of charges, is to make sure that the townspeople have the most responsive and
Strategically located.
thank you. I couldn't come up with that, but
fiscal responsibility, right? Take that into account.
I totally understand that, but like to then say that it's, you know, there's some personal stuff and history. I don't know that I could take that into account when I'm trying to figure out like what to do next.
It certainly gives me pause on the $11.5 million.
Well, I think there's a little, we're in a small town, and except for one person at this table, because I don't know, the rest of us could have an affiliation to one department or another, right? And so right, absolutely, and that's typical of this board or others in this process, and it just kind of muddies the water, if you will. So there are some who would say we need one fire department, a Willington Fire Department, if you will, and then we might not need the same, we wouldn't be duplicating some of facilities in a new build and an addition. And some of that have been discussed at the efficiency committee. It makes this job difficult, but I think the fact that they're bringing one big plan is a little bit more helpful, a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
And you look at the history of the studies that are conducted regarding the faces of the fire. I think there was one of the sites out there, which one was, that, you know, basically praise the location. Whether you're one department or you're two, the location of the facilities where they are, in accordance with your call patterns, in accordance with your activity levels of where incidents occur, accidents, EMS calls, you look at pin maps, you look at hotspots, all this. They're actually pretty well located.
So they're in those studies.
Yeah, and ISO, they're there.
ISO is, Stuart, ISO says within, you gotta have a firehouse or.
You have to have a firehouse within 5 road miles of everybody in town. And there actually are, or have mutual aid coming automatically for a house fire if we're not within 5 miles. The change in your homeowners insurance, we've had a couple incidents or inquiries from insurance companies going from roughly $600-800 a year for homeowners insurance to $3,200 if you're not within the 5 miles.
Right. All the things are taken into
consideration. And with that, like I said, all this stuff has been considered and all this stuff has been discussed in terms of whether it's one department or 6. The apparatus needs to stay where it is, the state
Still need a firehouse in this area.
And that's kind of collectively, we're all like, we just need to replace what's there, right?
Okay, so I had not heard that before, so I'm sorry.
I just want to mention that that a big deal changer in this big picture thinking doesn't really go back 25 years. I mean, that's certainly the history of both fire departments go back longer than that. It's that the church property became available and the Hill with private money purchased that land with the idea of a firehouse or a firehouse that would be central in the town and serving the town. You know, regardless of what comes out in the end, I think that in itself is sort of a let's look at the whole town together kind of moment, which is what I see them doing by coming together on this request. But still, it's a time to really look at where are the facilities, how are we meeting the 5 mile requirement, for instance, and things like that, and what's the most efficient way to do that. But a big deal changer is that we have a large piece of property now that's in play for whatever that thinking is, that wasn't there, what, 2 years ago? I don't remember when the purchase was exactly.
And that being said, the same argument can be made for the North Station Wellington, that properties, there's, how many acres there?
15.
15, just built off 5, it's the same thing. It's a, ready-made area.
Right.
It can be easily expanded, it's.
Well, we have to factor it into these things that predate it, I think. And so that's the point I wanted to make in this big discussion about history.
I have a question about history, as long as we're there.
They both have their hands up on mine.
Oh, so sorry. I'll make it super quick. I realize that. Has Wellington historically had 2 fire departments, or is this a relatively new?
Decades.
Very quickly, Wellington 1, which is known as South Wellington Fire, was actually an offshoot of the fire department, fire brigade that was formed when the mill was in operation in the late 1800s, early 1900s. In 1954, 53, no, that was formed this way.
So yes, lots and lots of years. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay.
Sorry.
With Melissa, did you ever hand up?
Yeah, I did, but it pretty much was touched on about the whole point of being 2 fire departments, I thought, because of how big Wellington was and how, getting to everybody, that's why you need 2 fire departments, I thought.
That's why we need 2 fire facilities.
Yeah.
Right, okay, yes.
Facilities need to be there.
So facility is distinct from the department.
Yes.
That's what I said earlier. It doesn't matter if it's 1 fire department or 6.
There's actually 3 firehouses.
Facilities, yes.
Yeah.
They have to remain the same.
So the other precipitating event, though, that this is showing up in year 1 as both projects all in, is because of the school project that is being talked about, and that is. So if that doesn't happen, and there is no big bond that this can just get tacked onto, what's that plan?
Honestly, then we have to push for a bond, at least for the North Station.
We'd like to do that bonded anyway.
We don't have, we're at the point, we're running out of options.
So are you going to push for both stations in that scenario as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody's all in on that.
Yes.
Okay. It's different.
It's different.
Could I ask just like how much for each and that 11.5, which you guys combine? And are there any economies of scale? And
so we really the 11.5 is a shot in the dark of what we had heard from different consumers. That was, we were told the last time or when our plans were done was 2.9 to do our addition. We're figuring that's going to be 5, somewhere in that ballpark.
So 11.5, you don't even know if that's enough to cover all the things that are just structural.
To be able to get this in, that was the correct. We went off of what we knew and added to what we were told by the market increases.
Right. So in today's current economy and pricing and stuff, it seems like we could get what we need done with this kind of funding.
So what you need done is
an addition and a fire.
So looking at parking lot replacement.
No.
An addition at the one closer to River Road Fields.
Okay, so I'm just going with what they have here. So I've got replacement of Hearst extraction equipment. Obviously, that's
completely separate. Yep.
Parking lot replacement and survey of 25 Old Farms Road
would go into the 11.5.
That would go, okay. Squad 113 refurbishment. That sounds like equipment. Yep. Bay floor repair replacement of 25. That would be
they can go away. Part
of the design and engineering of 25 Old Farms Road.
Part of the 11
would be part of it. And then also I see R149 replacement as equipment would be part of it. Okay, thank you.
Part of the confusion with that is there's one parking lot is for 24, right? Yeah. Bay floor is for 24. Yes. If there's some way we could sort of differentiate with old and new, would help, because I think all the Hill stuff says 25.
Yeah. But I think they have 2 projects in one, Steph, and I saw the same thing.
Yeah, well, I know it does.
You have survey over
once
here
for 32.
But they do say Bay floor repair replacement 25. That's
2 different things.
That's a really the
Survey
existing
this
station.
place, fix something over here.
Survey across the road.
Design this place and fix something over here. So
Right,
they
so
really
that's a
should be,
lot of things right there, okay,
yeah,
okay.
they really should have been their own project.
Okay.
I just have a quick question, and maybe this is more directed at you, Christina. I just can't read the spreadsheet. right
Yes,
now.
I was gonna,
So
that's what I wanted to,
It's,
it's wrong in the spreadsheet. I put it in twice. I wasn't really sure so,
I don't even think we're asking the same question. I think I really am not that afraid about reading the spreadsheet. So it says in 26-27, no projects submitted to allow Fund 17 to accumulate.
yeah,
But I don't see anything coming out of Fund 17 unless
We haven't assigned the
There's
sources
existing
yet.
leases that come out.
Yeah, they're
Right.
existing.
We just haven't assigned the sources yet.
So what,
yeah.
so what would be coming out of Fund 17 that you
There
would?
will be an ambulance payment whenever we can. Have one.
But the equipment.
Yep. The
That
equipment,
gets paid out of Fund
Yeah.
17, typically fire, so of their requests, those equipment purchases.
So to me, this implies though, if you're saying 26-27, no projects submitted, then
No
other
new
of these
projects.
things would, what?
no new projects.
Right. In that year, they're not gonna be asking for anything new currently.
From Fund 17.
Right.
Right, well,
Right.
yeah,
So what if these
You
things-
guys. to-
that's equipment, it's equipment.
Equipment.
They're just not gonna ask for any equipment that year to add to the load, because all of this equipment ends up as lease payments coming out of Fund 17 in all of the years.
So the Squad 113 refurbishment would come out of Fund 17?
Yeah.
Most likely.
Maybe if I give you a little background on Fund 17, the revenue source for that is billing for ambulance trips. What we get from the insurance, but in the very broad figures, it's been fairly consistent at about a gross income of about $220,000 per year. Out of that, we pay a 10% fee to the company that does our billing. We pay for the winter paramedic fee, which is kind of based on per call, as well as the per capita fee with them, which is roughly $30,000 to $40,000 a year for the paramedic. And the last Board of Finance calculation, they did it, and I didn't, was, or Donna helped with the net revenue out of that was about $150,000 a year. So in the past, Fund 17 pays for a lot of things. It does not pay for everything depending on what the project is. We, between CIP and the Board of Finance, they have looked at other funding sources occasionally for fire-related projects in order to keep Fund 17 solvent. One of the spreadsheets you may not seen was the the individual funds and the progression of the income, expenses, net balance, and shoot that out 5 years. And the idea is you don't want to be drawing Fund 17 especially, but for all of us for that matter, below zero. You can't do that. And so there's some money in Fund 17, but it's also lined up to either do current payments, or if you know that something's coming and you want to pay it in full, or something you can't lease, like a refurbishment, may or may not come out of Fund 17.
Okay. We have to wrap things up, guys.
Yes.
We're gonna
We-
leave the room.
We can't continue this one.
No.
Thank you
I'm
guys.
having a
Thank you very
blast.
much.
I would just go on all night.
I
This
didn't,
is a
Come
big
back.
topic.
Topic that-
If you guys haven't resolved it in 25 years, we're not going
we're
to.
not gonna. I'm gonna fix the spreadsheet and send it back out to you guys, but the thing that's different is under EMS. I just put the addition replacement. I didn't know what numbers to use for the bond. And I labeled it wrong, and I actually used the same thing twice, so just ignore all that. I'm gonna fix it.
So this
But-
thing,
Yeah.
okay.
You can look at it correctly.
Yeah, but if I'm following correctly, the thought would be to bond in next year so that some number would need to get paid in the first year for the note, and then there'd be a bond payment the rest of the years. So that's
As we get into this, I have lots of
so that's
questions
option
about that.
A, and then option B is to just leave all these other things in and have that one be a much lower. I don't know. So we'll have option A and B, basically. But I'll go with A on the sheet.
Could I ask a real quick, simple question? The 60,000, oh, did they leave?
They had to go, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it says, it talks, Stu might know. It talks about 12,000 in construction
Yep.
for that extrication equipment. I missed that detail. What is that for?
A lot of wiring. So the new tools are 100% electronic. or battery packs. We don't have power running into that compartment right now.
Okay,
So they have to take the parent chunk of the truck apart to run both shore power when it's plugged into the station and off our generator if it's on steam, as well as remove the existing power units that are in there now, the cord reel, wanting to come in and out. That as well.
thank you.
I think we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks for that.